Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, to everyone. I'm Amira Seebach, she, her, from 826 National. It's truly a pleasure to be with you, and I want to begin with gratitude. Thank you for making the time to be here. Thank you for showing up, not just to another virtual gathering, but to a conversation that asks something more of all of us. As is our practice, I also want to acknowledge that the 826 Network, our national team and our chapters across San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago, Boston, DC, New Orleans, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and beyond, operates on the ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. We offer this acknowledgement as a starting point, a reminder of our responsibility to learn, to listen, and to support Indigenous communities, including the young people we serve. Before we begin, just a few quick notes. We'd love to hear from you, so please say hello in the chat and share where you're joining from. If questions come up, drop them in the chat as well. We'll return to them at the end, and we invite you to present in whatever way feels right, listening, reflecting, or taking notes. And that includes reaching out to us at 826 National to continue this conversation. At 826, we often say that writing is where young people begin to understand themselves and where the world begins to understand them too. But that only happens if someone is listening. If someone creates the space, if someone believes those words are worth hearing. And that's why this moment matters, because today is certainly about literacy and it is about mental health. It's also about something underneath both: voice. Who has it, who's encouraged to use it, and who is still waiting to be invited in. What you're about to hear is not just a presentation, it's a reframing, a possibility, and if we're honest, a bold challenge to think differently about what we fund, what we measure, and what we make space for. It's my honor to introduce Laura Brief, CEO of 826 National, and Dr. Miah Daughtery, President and Principal Advisor of the Ed.M Daughtery Group, an educator with a background in K-12 literacy and policy, and VP of the 826 National Board of Directors.
Thanks, Amira. And thank you, everyone, for being here. We are so excited to be in this room with you and to be having this important discussion with you. I'm going to open us with a question. What if the literacy crisis in America isn't about test scores, but about whose voices are heard? And what if the mental health crisis isn't just about access to care, but also about access to language? Today, Miah and I want to make the case that these two crises share a common solution and that you have the power to help us grow that solution. I'm Laura Brief, CEO of 826 National, the largest youth writing network in the country, serving nearly 1 million students across our 9 chapters, classrooms, community-based organizations, and platforms. And we exist because writing is one of the most powerful yet underutilized tools we have for learning, healing, expression, and connection.
Hi, Laura and friends. I'm Dr. Miah Daughtery. I'm an educator, researcher, longtime teacher, and proudly I serve as the Vice President of the 826 National Board. Together, Laura and I have spent our careers asking why writing, the very thing that builds thought, voice, and belonging, has become the thing least taught. Today, we're going to talk about writing as a meaningful way to address two things we all care about: youth emotional wellness and literacy. And we're going to show you what we've built and what we're asking you to help us grow.
So we're talking about writing as educational and emotional equity. If we want to address both the literacy crisis and the youth mental health crisis, we have to start with the same question: whose stories count? Equity in education isn't just about access to schools or to standards, it's about access to self-expression. Writing builds literacy, but it also builds belonging. It's a bridge between comprehension and consciousness, and between language and liberation. And at 826, we see this every single day. A student in New Orleans writes about grief and it steadies her breathing. A bilingual student in Chicago publishes a story that his mom can open up a book and read. A teacher in Boston tells us, when my students write, they become visible again. When students write, they claim authorship of their stories and of their futures. But as you can tell from the slide that is currently showing, before we start talking about stats and systems, I want to talk a little bit about magic, the kind of magic that hides in plain sight. Jason Reynolds, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with and know him as the brilliant, prolific youth voice advocate and author that he is, and one of our favorite co-conspirators, he calls writing the strangest thing. Take a look at this slide. 26 letters. That's it. That's all we get. 26 little symbols we keep arranging and rearranging again and again and again. And somehow those tiny codes and patterns, they can crack open a person's chest and move their heart. There are infinite ways to build a world with these 26 letters, to start a riot, to start a poem. That's the power that we're talking about with you today, the power of writing. And so now here's the question that drives us at 826. Who gets to learn to use them? Who gets to learn to yield this world-building, heart-touching, expressive power of these 26 letters? And how does the answer to that question, this question of who gets to learn to write in this country, how does the answer to this question shape the trajectory of individual lives and the well-being of youth and their communities and the well-being and trajectory of our country? We know the power of writing through decades of lived experience in 826 writing centers and classrooms, and we know it through the data. But as you're about to hear, and as you are likely also sadly well aware, access to effective and joyful writing education is woefully, inequitably distributed across the United States.
So here's the truth about literacy in America. We talk about and assess reading endlessly, but we've stopped asking if students can write. The last national scored writing assessment was in 2011. That data indicated a serious problem. 9 out of 10 Black and Hispanic 12th graders did not write at grade level proficiency. Does anyone think writing has gotten better since then? I'm going to ask you to pause for a moment and take a look at the slides. Now, at the same time, reading scores have fallen to their lowest level in 3 decades. Just 31% of 8th graders and 26% of 12th graders read at or above proficiency. When it comes to writing, we sadly have no current national data at all. We stopped assessing it 14 years ago. Abysmal reading outcomes, and no federal or state data on writing for more than a decade. Not only is this an unbalanced measurement, it's clearly also ineffective. Reading without writing is like having all the ingredients for a cake, but never going through the process of baking it, of creating a new masterpiece of your own. When students read only other people's words, They learn about the power of other people's words. When they write their own words, they practice that power for themselves. We have built an educational system that treats reading as an input and as the only input, but writing, the act of producing language, of shaping thought, not even as an output, but as an afterthought. So, friends, we have lost the plot. And to regain it, we need to remember that writing is equally as important as reading and that they are the keys to each other.
One of our students, a 12-year-old, wrote, "I used to think my story was a hallway, long and lonely. But now I think it's a house, the kind you walk into and smell food and feel safe." That's what literacy looks like when it's whole. Reading and writing belong together, and student voices belong at the center. So, thus far, we've been talking about the literacy crisis. Now, if the literacy crisis is partially about whose stories are told, then we believe the mental health crisis is what happens when young people can't tell theirs. When young people don't see their own stories reflected back, they start to question if their stories matter. Today, unfortunately, sadly, a state of affairs that many of you are very familiar with. Today, 1 in 5 children in the United States struggles with a mental health challenge, but only 20% receive supportive care. The suicide rate for children of color is nearly twice that of their peers. And 40% of teens report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. 40% of teens. We're living through a crisis of youth well-being. There for so many reasons, right? After years of pandemic isolation and now cultural and civic upheaval and displacement, students are navigating trauma, they're navigating loss, they're navigating anxiety, and much of it is unspoken. And we talk about mental health as if the only tool is the counselor's office. And that is a really, really wonderful tool. But we're here to say and show you the evidence that mental health support and mental health preventative care can also take place on the page. And therefore, writing becomes a supportive tool for well-being that students get to carry with them for a lifetime.
Writing is more than expression, it's an evidence-based intervention. Studies show that structured writing reduces stress, improves mood, and builds cognitive flexibility. As a classroom teacher for more than a decade, I don't need the research to prove to me what I saw every day, that writing reduced stress, gave students an outlook, improved their mood, bolstered their sense of self-awareness and self-competency and self-advocacy, and built the kind of cognitive complexity that transferred from their page to the book we were reading. Students who write regularly report higher resilience, stronger social emotional skills, and greater school engagement. When students write, they move from the survival brain, the part focused on fear and protection, to the learning brain, which is open to imagination, empathy, and growth. When they journal about a challenge, they build self-awareness. When they write stories that imagine other perspectives, they build empathy. When they create poetry from pain or joy, they learn resilience. Writing helps young people author their way through their myriad and often conflicting emotions and into agency.
We talked a moment ago about the percentages of youth literacy around reading and writing, and we talked about the percentages of young people who are struggling with their mental health. What we didn't name is the number of kids we're talking about across the United States. So there are nearly 10 million students across K to 12 public schools nationwide. So, with nearly 10 million students in need of mental health support, schools and community organizations are trying desperately to be key players in restoring children's mental wellness. And the way they tackle this is evidence backed. They generally tackle it through social emotional learning, which is an educational approach that addresses the social, emotional, and behavioral components of mental health, as well as many other things. And there is a growing body of research that provides very strong evidence that writing encourages this growth. In fact, in our own research report on the subject, which you see on the screen, The Home We Create, we looked at what happens when students are given space to write. And we find, surprise, surprise, that writing helps build social and emotional strength and provides powerful protective scaffolding for their mental health. So let me give you a couple of examples. In 826 writing centers and classrooms, 93% of students report feeling safe and supported, conditions proven to strengthen mental well-being. 86% of students show a 5.5% increase in empathy and perspective taking measurable through their writing. And 94% of 826 students report better self-understanding through writing. And so what we're talking about there is, yes, it's academic progress, but it's not just academic progress. That's emotional literacy. Writing gives young people an emotional vocabulary to process and express what feels good, what hurts, what heals, and is an effective and accessible outlet to communicate and navigate through life's challenges. So that is why I'm going to ask Ellie if you don't mind shifting the slide. Thank you. We have some great colleagues in the background, like Elio, supporting the beautiful images you see on the screen. That's why we are proud to share that we recently launched the Right to Thrive Fund in collaboration with the JED Foundation. It is a first of its kind. It's the first of its kind to invest in writing as prevention and to aim to bring these proven benefits that we just talked about to scale. Right to Thrive is building a national movement, resourcing schools, libraries, and youth-serving organizations to make writing part of every student's mental health toolkit. By uniting research, practice, and philanthropy, we're creating something the field has never had: a dedicated, evidence-based infrastructure that treats writing as essential to emotional health.
The fund provides grants to schools and youth organizations for writing-based well-being programs. It trains educators and mentors to foster spaces of creative expression and reflection, and it advances shared research to demonstrate writing's measurable impact on youth mental health. And here's what we've learned since we launched. The need and the readiness are both far greater than we ever anticipated.
So we are in the pilot phase of Right to Thrive, and we've launched this inaugural Right to Thrive cohort in 6 very different places. And these places are not laboratory settings. The grantees reflect the complex and ever-changing realities of students' lives, making them the perfect settings and the perfect partners for proof of concept. If writing is going to function as structured reflection and community building, it has to work in real life and in real time and in real lives. So we are very, very proud to announce our inaugural cohort of grantees. You see them up here on the slides. We have a tribal health center serving Native youth along the California-Arizona border, where wellness is understood as inseparable from culture and community. A Title I high school in Atlanta with a 5% grade level reading proficiency rate, where CORE Inc. embeds the program directly into 12th grade English classes. The Boys and Girls Club of Greater Dallas is a large scale urban after school system serving hundreds of young people across the city. Youth Build Philadelphia, a re engagement school serving young adults ages 17 to 20 who've left traditional high school, where writing becomes a tool for processing experience and imagining a future. And we're a little biased, but I have to say, maybe our favorite among the group, 826 MSP in Minneapolis, running weekly workshops for sixth and seventh graders during what their team calls, and we all know is a crucial moment for students living in the Minneapolis community, navigating the tensions and uncertainty and anxiety and fear that comes with all of that. And last but not least, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Fort Smith, Arkansas, a rural community where access to writing programs has been nearly non-existent. Each of these sites is going to serve between 100 and 500 students with the Right to Thrive program, which is an SEL integrated curriculum for 8 consecutive instructional sections. We provide facilitator training, and research is embedded from the start. We also provide the funding to support it all.
Guys, this is the real test. This is where the rubber is meeting the road, and it really is working.
Okay, here's the part that made us stop in our tracks and that should probably make us all stop and pause for a minute, right? We knew Right to Thrive. Um, we knew we were interested in the Right to Thrive organizations that became a part of this pilot, and that we would learn so much about how this work plays out in each of these settings. What we didn't anticipate is the message that we would get through the applicants alone. When we opened applications for the Right to Thrive Fund, we received 341 applications. This was a very short period that this RFP was open. And this wasn't just an RFP for a grant. It was an RFP to do some deep partnership around this programming, be a part of this pilot. So these 341 applications represented not mild interest, but urgency. And we wanted to share a little bit about these applications. So they came from every single state in the country: red states, blue states, urban centers, rural communities. And what this tells us is that educators and communities from all of these places are saying there's a critical need to better support their young people's mental health. Collectively, these 340 organizations serve about 1 million students. And had we been able to accept all of these organizations into Right to Thrive, 62,000 students would have been able to participate if we were able to fund every applicant.
Take a look at how how these organizations serve. Among the students represented by applicants, 75% are from low-income communities. The majority are students of color, 38% Black or African American, 28% Hispanic or Latino, 26% are English language learners. Many are navigating systemic barriers, and they have limited access to meaningful creative spaces. This is not expanding our work into a different population. This is extending support to the same young people, 826, we have always centered through new community pathways. The alignment is clear and it's unmistakable.
So, what was most striking, perhaps, to us wasn't just the volume of applications, it was the readiness that they indicated. We assessed every single one of these organizations against 6 criteria, including program design, facilitator readiness, a strength-based approach to young people, equity and reach, mental health response systems, and scale potential. And what we found, again, is that readiness to do this work is high. These organizations all have the staff in place, leadership buy-in, strong relationships with the young people they work with, and really solid operational infrastructure. So to us, readiness, when we say readiness here, what we mean is the ability to translate the idea into action immediately and responsibly. And the message we take from this is that the field wants this and is prepared.
We know that writing can help young people process the experiences of their lives. 87% of organizations who applied said they believe writing will build belonging and community. 78% believe it will foster well-being and creativity. 56% see it as building resilience and coping skills, something that all of us need. That tells us something important. The field believes writing can help people emotionally. This is that opportunity. What we are providing is the structure, training, resources, and evidence to address what we know is already valued and valuable. That is exactly what the Right to Thrive provides.
So we know that demand is real, readiness is real, and the research supports our approach.
Right to Thrive is not a contained pilot. It is the beginning of a national strategy. We launched it, we're testing it, and now we have 341 organizations who want to be a part of it. We have students and educators telling us that it's working, and now this is the time to grow it.
Y'all, we know we are gathered in this moment on this Zoom in crazy times. We are gathering in a moment when I can't even begin to name all of the things. Book bans are all of the things in general that are related to the work we do, the work y'all do, what our students are experiencing. We are in a moment when book bans are rising, when teachers are being silenced, when BIPOC, LGBTQ+, multilingual, and neurodivergent students are being told their stories are too political, too personal, too much. And everything's connected. The literacy crisis and the mental health crisis are not separate emergencies. They are inextricably linked. And writing is a way to navigate them both. So, what would it mean to fund writing with the same force as we fund reading? To support developing one's own voice as equally as we support reading others? To invest not just in the mechanics of literacy, but in the muscle of imagination, because we believe that imagination too is a public good.
So you should come along with us. We have the momentum, and now it's time for force and mass. We, Laura and I, would like to invite you to join the Right to Thrive Fund and come along with us to build a better literacy infrastructure for students across the country. Your partnership makes expanding this to meet the need possible. Direct grants to schools, libraries, and youth-serving organizations to make writing a core part of every student's experience and mental health toolkit. Facilitator training, so educators can hold both writing and emotional reflection responsibly when students bring real experiences into the room. credible field level research that proves writing can scale as support for youth well-being so the whole sector can learn from what we build. And finally, a national network connecting the organizations doing this work, sharing what's working, and amplifying student voices through publication. With your investment, we can open possibilities and improve writing outcomes.
Can I just take a moment to look at how awesome this kid is and look at what he has written on this page? This gets me every single time. So together we can write a better story. We can write a story where literacy and mental health are not parallel crises, but challenges that we can take on with an accessible shared solution. So we would love you to fuel this first of its kind nationwide intervention by investing in, joining us in the Right to Thrive Fund. So at this point, we want to hear from you. What questions do you have? Does what about this resonates with you? Where do you see the greatest opportunity to engage? We want to hear from you.
Hey, thank you so much, Laura and Maya. We did have a question in the chat, and so I wanted to thank Dawn. Dawn is asking if we offer access to the Right to Thrive curriculum.
Thanks for the question, Dawn. And absolutely, we do. 826 National works towards the power and joy of writing being accessible to every student in every context. And part of how we do that is by sharing what works. So the Right to Thrive curriculum is available to any organization, any teacher who wants it. We put it out through 826 Digital, which is our platform of resources for teachers and educators. The Right to Thrive Fund pairs that curriculum with the training for your facilitators, hands-on coaching, and a publication opportunity, along with the research that will help you figure out how to make this more effective over time in your setting. But the curriculum is available for free for anyone.
Thanks, Laura, and again, thank you, Dawn. I have another question here. Someone is saying they'd like to get involved. How can they get more involved? I can take that question as well.
Take that question, Amira.
So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are open to continuing dialogue on how to grow and scale this meaningful and transformational program. I invite you to reach out to me personally. My email is amira@826national.org. You can also visit 826national.org and look into the Right to Thrive Fund, and there's a way to contact us through there. If you want to get more involved, we're ready for you. Let's do this. So I'm just going to scan the chat to see if there are any additional questions.
Or anything that's on your mind about this work.
Caitlin asked earlier if the slides will be shared. Yes, Caitlin, we are recording the session and we will be sending the session out to all of the attendees, including the folks that are in the room, but also the people that couldn't make it to the room to make sure that they have the valuable information that Laura and Maya provided. Any other questions?
Some questions coming up in the chat.
Yes, Trista is asking, without the grant funding, can you explain the cost that goes into fully receiving the training and the like?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, so bear with me and let me know if I'm not answering quite the right question. So without the grant funding, can you explain the cost that goes into fully receiving the training? So this shouldn't, if you're talking about the cost to the nonprofit partner, there actually shouldn't be any cost other than the time it takes to get familiar with the curriculum and to deliver it and facilitate it in a beautiful, efficacious way with your students. We are providing grants in order to incentivize this movement to really help organizations think about the intersection between writing and mental health and to take that leap to bring it into their setting to their young people. And we also, the grant also is in recognition of the fact that they are not just bringing this to their young people, but helping us learn about what works so that we can bring that learning to the field as a whole. And so the grant recognizes, thank you for letting us learn from you and with you so we can bring that learning to the field. I hope
Great.
that
The questions
answers
are kind
the question.
think it does. I don't see any follow-up, but if I do, I'll let you know, Laura. The questions are coming in fast and furious. Um, Rita says, I believe Maya said reading and writing are keys to each other. Does 826 work on reading proficiency with writing?
Maya, do you want to answer that?
I will. So indirectly, so 826 is not a reading program, but what our students do with text is, I think, pretty meaningful. So every 826 site is filled with, I mean, a library that will rival your local schools, to be honest. There's like hundreds and hundreds of books. And students use those books as mentor texts as a way to develop their own writing. So, but what 826 does not do is teach foundational writing. Like you're not going to get a phonics lesson. You're not going to get like reading fluency. You'll so students will be in text, but they're using it for a different purpose, and that purpose is to serve as mentors and to support their own personal writing.
Thanks, Maya. I skipped over Emily. Emily's asking, can other nonprofits partner with Right to Thrive?
Absolutely, in a number of ways. One, we will be reopening this grant cycle and this project for a new cohort shortly. We will be launching a new cohort in the fall. So there's certainly that way to engage. And then there are lots of ways to engage with us and with the curriculum beyond the Right to Thrive Fund. So I would encourage you to reach out to us, to reach out to Amira, to reach out to me, and we can figure out what you have in mind, what you're doing, and how we can best work together to bring this work to your young people.
Thanks, Laura, because I believe that sharing joy as often as possible and gratitude is a good thing. Jennifer Coughlin wanted to say thank you so much for sharing the information this morning slash afternoon. And Bird wants to build on Emily's questions. Can organizations that provide free slash cost reduced writing workshops for youth that are not nonprofits connect to Right to Thrive?
Great question. And I think on the surface, yes. We work with schools, we work with libraries. Um, I would think yes. And again, reach out to us and let's figure out how to do it. Let's get the specifics and figure out how to do it together.
Great. Here's a great question by Meta. I'm hoping I pronounced that name correctly. Um, they are asking, how are recipients selected for participation, and how is effectiveness evaluated, measured, communicated? The last part of her question, or their question, I'm sorry, how was this program initiated or instigated? Let me know if I can break that down in piece by
Can you say
piece.
that one more time, Amira?
So the first question is, how are recipients selected?
Awesome. So we put out an RFP into the world and organizations applied. And we looked at a number of factors. As we mentioned earlier, unfortunately, we only had the means to provide 5 grants. And what we're looking to do this year and what we're looking to do hand in hand with many of y'all is expand that. So it's available to many, many more of the organizations that applied. But we evaluated them on a number of things. We evaluated them on their geography. Are they in a place that don't already have an 826? Are they in a place in which their students don't yet have access to effective and joyful writing education? We evaluated them on their mental health response supports. Do they have things set up so that if something does come up for a young person, even though this curriculum doesn't ask that of young people, if something does come up, do they have systems in place to support that young person through whatever it is that comes up? We evaluated whether they have a strength-based approach to working with young people because that is core to what we believe and core to what we believe makes an effective writing program. We evaluated the diversity of their student body. We evaluated whether they had facilitators ready to jump in and participate in the training, and whether they were up for and willing to participate in the research that we were doing on that. And I think it sort of leads to the next question. What we were asking of them and what we're looking at is we're doing pre and post surveys with the facilitators and with all of the students to learn about their views on and these are through age appropriate surveys because this program works with students from 4th grade through 12th grade. We ask them about what their views on their mental health. We ask them about what tools they feel like are available to them. We ask them about their relationship to writing. We ask them about their relationship to their story. And then we repeat that survey at the end of our time together with them after the 8 weeks of the program.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we are deeply invested in the evaluation. We believe firmly in evidence-based excellence and 826 writing programs. And so our research team is led by Dr. Kayla Good, who's put a lot of thought and effort into making sure that we are evaluating the program for its effectiveness and able to share that out with the field. So I wanted to make sure I shared that. And then the last part is the origin story. How did we get here with Right to Thrive, Laura?
Wait, I also realized I didn't answer part of that last question. I'm so sorry, which is just to say, how will it be communicated? So 826 National, part of how we bring this methodology to teachers and educators and students everywhere is through our research. Our research looks at the state of writing education in the United States, but also looks at the efficacy of 826. Our chapters, the 9 chapters across the US, do such effective, beautiful, deep, meaningful work with students, and that work works. And so what we do is we work to understand what is it exactly that works about 826 chapters, and how can we teach others to be able to replicate some of that in their settings, in their classrooms, in their after school program, in their library. And so we produce these research reports that talk about best practices around student publishing or writers' rooms, those kinds of things. And we'll be putting out a research report on this too to tell the field what we've learned about the intersection of youth writing and mental health and best practices that people can leverage in their own settings. So what was the last question that you asked, Amira?
How did we initiate, or how was Right to Thrive instigated? So basically, what's the origin story?
Yeah, and I feel like I've been talking a lot. Maya or Amira, do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
I'm happy to, but you listen, I yield to Maya.
Will you please repeat the question?
Why Right to Thrive? Why now? What's the origin story of Right to Thrive?
Okay, well, I'll tell you why now. But at the origin story, I'll defer back to Amira because I think we haven't heard enough from you. But why now is the need is great. Like I don't know and I say this from the perspective of an educator and an 826 family. Like I'm a part of the 826 family. So I was a board chair of the DC chapter for several years, and then I moved to the national board, right? So I've been involved with 826 since 2016 for a decade. In that time, we all lived through a global pandemic, and we saw firsthand the impact of the pandemic, not only on student academics, like that's been so widely reported on and studied, and data continues to show students are still not making the gains we would expect them to make. But we also experience, many of us in our own homes, feelings of isolation and loneliness. And that had a real impact on students. Like my friends have kids, and some of the elementary school kids developed real anxiety, like stopped talking to people, were afraid to go back to school because there were other people in the classroom. So the need is undeniable. I don't think I'm certain that as a society, we haven't fully reckoned with the emotional toll of a pandemic and what that toll means at different ages and stages and grades. But also, as an educator, I know how much writing has been stripped out of the curricula. So the why now is the evidence could not be more glaring. The fire could not be more five alarm. So we wanted to do something where we thought we could contribute to better outcomes, but also better experiences for kids who really need better experiences right now. And Amira, I defer to you to talk about the origin story of Right to Thrive.
Yeah, I think concurrently with all of the research around isolation and the mental health of young people in the country, we're also seeing the research on how writing impacts these things. There's a study out of Boise State that talks about how writing helps build confidence, and we're seeing a collection of peer-reviewed research that supports writing as an upstream intervention. And so that it makes it our obligation to make sure that people know we're here, right? We are a wonderful little secret that we don't think should be a secret. I often talk with Laura about the work that we do, and I say that writing is like the vitamin C of the education world, right? It is that little bit of something that everybody needs in order to get them through. List the things, right? In this case, it's mental health. And, personally speaking or anecdotally, I talk about how writing helped me cope through my parents' divorce. I know that personally. I'm sure many of us in this room have used writing for interventions themselves, and we just don't call it interventions. And now we have the research to back that, right? It changes brain chemistry, as Laura mentioned earlier. And so we wanted to make sure that folks were aware that this is accessible. We wanted to incentivize it with the Right to Thrive Fund so that, we sprinkle a little bit of a solution across this country to organizations who are deeply invested in making sure their students are okay. So, kind of the origin story now. Okay, now I hate to cut the conversation short because I love a good chat. We are coming up on time. We see all of the questions in chat. We will be answering those on the back end of this because we want to make sure that the dialogue continues. Um, my email has been placed into the chat several times. Feel free to reach out to me. And I have colleagues in at 826 that are far more prepared and better experts at answering these questions than I. So I commit to making sure we get you the right answers, but stay in communication with us. It's super important. And as I mentioned earlier, everyone will be getting the slides to this presentation. So we want to make sure that you have all of the research and the information that Laura and Miah provided. And so Laura, Miah, thank you so much for sliding in and presenting all of this wonderful information. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for
We wouldn't
having
be an
me.
HEC. Yeah, thank you guys so much. I want to respect folks' time before people jump out of the room. We would not be an 826 without inviting you to experience the transformative work of our young writers. At 826 National, we've partnered with remarkable authors, change makers, and cultural voices to publish anthologies filled with words that truly move. We invite you to visit 826national.org to explore these collections alongside hundreds of publications from our chapters across the country, each one a testament to the power of youth voice. If there's one thing I hope stays with you, it's this. When young people are given the space to write, they are not just learning a skill. They are discovering that their voice matters. And when that happens, it changes how they see themselves and what they believe is possible. We've heard today that the need is real, that readiness is real, and now the opportunity is in front of us. Through Right to Thrive, we are building something both simple and powerful, bringing writing into the everyday spaces of young people's lives as a tool for reflection, connection, and well-being. Not as an extra, not as enrichment, but as something essential. So as you leave today, I would love for you each to experience, or for each of you to reach out. Please scan the QR code on your screen for more information. I invite you to carry one question. What would it look like to fund voice as essential infrastructure? Because when young people write, they don't just change their own stories, they change what the world is able to hear. We're so grateful to be in community with you. This recording, of course, as I mentioned, will be made available to you. We're popping up a poll. Haiti, who's working feverishly in the background, has put a poll together. We want to know who's been in community with us today. So if you'll take a few seconds to complete this poll, we'd be forever grateful. Again, we thank you for being here and for all the ways you show up for young people. Go and be well.